Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2019 Tiffin Allegro Red Motorhome, we're going to be showing you how to install the Air Force One supplemental braking system just for the coach side. But before we do that, why don't we check it out and make sure this is a kit that's going to be right for you. Before we get too carried away talking about the braking system and kind of checking all that out, I figured it'd be beneficial to just spend a minute or two and refresh yourselves on the main things that we're going to need to flat tow our vehicle down the road in the first place. There's going to be a total of 5 main parts that you're going to need. The first one is going to be the base plate, and that's going to provide us with a solid and reliable attachment point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. And the tow bar is going to be the second component. That's going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of your vehicle to the back of your motorhome. The third main component is going to be safety cables, and these are just there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. They're going to keep everything paired together. The fourth main component is going to be tow bar wiring, and what this is going to do is transfer the lighting functions from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Chevy, keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main part will be a supplemental braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your Colorado whenever you hit the brakes in your RV, helping to bring you to a more predictable and complete stop. There are a couple more parts that aren't absolutely necessary, but I definitely like to recommend just to give you a good experience overall. And one of them is what's called a battery charge line. And what that's going to do is essentially maintain or trickle charge your truck's battery whenever you're flat towing it behind your motorhome. That way, it won't be drained from the braking system. A lot of times supplemental braking systems are going to use your truck's battery power. So what happens over time, they keep using power and power and power, and you just run out of juice. And so that's where that charge line is going to come into play. It's going to keep your battery full. That way when you get to where you're going, you'll hit the key and everything will start up. And the other thing that I suggest for the Colorado is what's called the automatic battery disconnect. And I always recommend this for these trucks because with these, whenever you flat tow them, you have to disconnect the battery. And so that really leaves you a couple of choices. One of them being to pop the hood, undo the battery whenever you're flat towing it, hook it back up whenever you're ready to start your truck. And I mean, is it doable? Sure, it'd probably get annoying over time. And that's where something like this would come into play. All right, so instead of having to deal with all that, you simply just push the button, it disconnects the battery. Whenever you're ready to start the truck, push it again, power comes on, and you're ready to roll. With this kit being the parts just for the motorhome side, this is probably only going to interest a small group of people with a very particular set of needs. But the good news is, if you fall into this category, there's going to be an option for you. So with that said, there's a couple scenarios where this would come into play. One of them being, let's say, if you already have or familiar with the Demco Air Force One braking system, you like the way it works, it's reliable, and let's say you end up upgrading motorhomes, right? You get a new motorhome. Is it really worthwhile to go underneath and rip all them parts off and put them on your new motorhome? Some of you may say yes. A lot of people probably aren't going to want to have to deal with it. So there's an option. Instead of getting the whole kit when you don't really need the whole kit, you can get just the motorhome side. Get you squared away. Your old vehicle already is set up to be flat towed, so you can just hook everything back up and get the show on the road. Another thing, or another reason some of you may want this kit is maybe the original one got damaged in some way, maybe it was improperly installed, something happened along those lines. It's rare, but stuff does like that happen. You get a ton of miles out on the road, weird things can happen, right? Or maybe if you get a new motorhome and you still got the old one, but you want to tow with your new one, this will kind of translate over to that as well. So there's a bunch of scenarios that this can be used in. Probably the most popular though, getting a new motorhome and getting it set up and already being familiar with the vehicle side of things. So you know, if that's what you're running into, this is definitely a solution for you. So one thing I do want to mention as well, if you actually need just the vehicle side, there's also second vehicle kits available, or if you need the whole package, you know, the side for the vehicle, the side for the motorhome, there's that kit available as well. So a lot of different solutions out there for all those different types of situations. But other than that, at the end of the day, I mean, really not much to it. It'll have all the parts you need to get things going on your RV, and be able to hook up to your towed vehicle and go out on the road and enjoy yourself. As far as getting this installed goes, it's really not too bad, nothing complicated per se. You know, it's not the most fun crawling underneath of a motorhome, but it's something you got to do one time, then you're done, right? So as long as you stay focused, should be in pretty good shape. But speaking of that, why don't we go ahead and get this installed together now. To begin our installation on our motorhome side, we're going to be working essentially just in front of our rear axle, and we have to get all the components and airlines and fittings installed. I want to mention you don't have to have a lift to do this. We just get it up in the air so we can see what we're doing a little bit easier, and hopefully give you guys at home a better visual as well. But this is definitely doable on the ground, just be a little bit tighter. Underneath the motorhome, we are just in front of our rear axle, and the first thing that you need to do is find a good spot to mount up your tank. So it turns out right here in this area, it's a perfect spot. It's close to our lines that we're going to be teeing into, and it's out of harm's way and everything else. And it turns out there's actually a factory bracket here holding on this air valve. I just removed the two nuts off of that, and the bracket on our tank already has some slotted holes in it, and so this is able to just push right up in place, and then I can simply tighten them nuts back down. And that's what's keeping it secure. This thing is not going anywhere. So once this thing is mounted, we're going to have a total of 3 airlines that we need to hook up. All right, and you're going to have this one here, which will be the supply line, and you'll plug in a piece of airline tubing into the quick connect fitting, and I'll show you in a minute how to do that properly and how to cut it properly and everything else. But you'll have one plugged into there, and then this one will go to your metered air, and so you'll plug one into there, and both of them lines are just going to shoot up about a foot above us. So that's where all of our main connections are. And then this one here, this is going to go back to the fitting at the very back of our motorhome that we can hook up, and this is what's actually going to give air to the vehicle side when we have it plugged in, towing behind our motorhome. So we'll get to this one in a minute. Let's focus on the the metered air and the supply line. Like I said, those are going to go up maybe a foot or so and get plugged in to the main lines up top. So our supply line, what that's going to mean is it's going to have constant air pressure all the time, and it's usually the thicker line. And in our case, it's this thick green line. And so what you want to do with that is make sure all the air is depleted out of the system, because obviously if you cut that line with 100 plus PSI in it, could get interesting. But to get the air out, you just hit the brakes a bunch with the engine off, and eventually all the pressure will come out. But what you're going to do is cut that line clean, take the included quick connect fitting, simply plug it in, and obviously plug in the the air line into the other one that came off of our tank. Same exact deal with our metered air connection. So this is our metered air connection, and usually this is a smaller line, but sometimes there will be a couple of these. But with the metered air, what you're looking for, it's only going to have air pressure when you hit the brakes. So you can test it by starting the motor up, getting some air pressure into the system, and then you can unplug this line and have an assistant hit the brakes, and when they hit the brakes, if air shoots out of this line, then that's how you know it's the metered air. But same concept. Once you've figured that out, cut that line clean, put in your T, and then plug in the line that comes from our new tank. And I want to say too, with these lines, before you plug these quick connects in, make sure they're clean. Take some rubbing alcohol or some brake cleaner or something like that and just wipe them clean, because a lot of times these can have like undercoating and dirt and stuff on them and then cause a leak. So make sure they're nice and clean, get them plugged in, and once this is done, we can route the remaining airline coming out of our tank all the way to the back of our motorhome. So now at the back of our motorhome, I ran our airline tube back here, and it's just so difficult to see underneath there, but pretty straightforward. Run this all the way back, do your best to avoid any hot or moving parts, and this is going to get connected to this fitting. And this fitting here I just secured to our fiberglass here. It's pretty thick, and I drilled a couple holes through it, just used some nuts and bolts to get that secure. So I talked about how you want to cut these lines to plug them into the quick connect fittings. And so you want to use a tool like this, or a tubing cutter, or a regular straight edge, and you want to cut it and inspect it. So you want this to be straight and clean. You don't want any like rough edges or burrs on it, because those can potentially cause a leak. So don't use regular snips, don't use your regular pair of dikes or cutters to do this, because it'll pinch the airline and then you'll probably get a leak. So you know, use something like this or some of the other tools I just suggested. But from there, you're just going to simply just plug that right in. You'll feel it kind of snap into place, and it'll lock in there, and you'll be good to go. So now that we have everything hooked up, what I like to do, start the motorhome, fill it up full of air, check for any air leaks. So by checking, you can obviously listen, or a better way is to take some soapy water, spray down where we're working. If you see any bubbles forming, you know you have a leak. If you don't, you know you're in good shape. If you do have a leak, drain the air, unplug the line. With these quick connects, you can kind of just hold the end of the connect with your finger and then pop the line out. And do that, recut the line, plug it in again, and check it again until you verify that you don't have any leaks. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Demco Air Force One supplemental braking system for the motorhome side only on our 2019 Tiffin Allegro Red.